To grease or not to grease? That is the question. Whether 'tis better to have greased than never to have greased at all. Yeah, today we're going to talk about steering heads. I'm down here on Spanish Banks, Vancouver. A little chilly this morning. It was about 34 degrees when I got up, a little bit of frost in the grass. It's warmed up a bit now, it's about 40. And we're down here. And there's something I want to talk about, kind of a debate about steering heads and the bearings in the steering heads, and do we grease them or do we not grease them? All right, so first of all, in the steering head, let's see if we can get a picture here. Try and turn this around way up in here. See if we can get some light in there. How are we doing? Right there. It's hard to see up in there. But right here, this is your steering head. Now on the bottom and up in the top, we've got tapered roller bearings. Right there is a grease nipple. Aha! Okay, but that grease nipple, if you go to Harley dealerships, they say, oh, we don't grease steering heads. No. We take them apart and we repack the bearings by hand. So if you ever have seen a tapered roller bearing, and I'm old school, so they used to have them in the front wheel bearings of cars, and it's basically a cone-shaped bearing. So on the top of the steering head, there's one on the top, one in the bottom. It's a cone-shaped roller bearing. Back in the day, we used to take them out of the front of the car. They had no grease nipples on them. So we take the bearings out. It was easy. Take the wheels off, take the bearings out, put a bunch of grease in your hand, bearing in your hand, roll it up, work the grease into the bearing. Okay. So Harley says that's what they do now. And you'll notice on my bike, there was a grease nipple on there. Apparently on the new bikes, there's no grease nipple at all. My question is, if there's a grease nipple, why would you not grease it? Well, you ask the people at Harley, and they'll say, oh, we don't grease those anymore. We just take the whole assembly apart and repack it by hand. Well, have a look at this. I mean, they're going to take the whole front end off your bike just to get at those bearings, to either replace them because they've never had grease put in them, and you'll see some YouTube videos about that, or they'll repack them by hand with grease. Seriously. Now, why would you want to do that? In my mind, at least back when this bike was built, this is a 2009. So a mechanical engineer that works for Harley gets paid a lot of money, very smart guy, designs bikes, how to build them, how to service them. He put in a grease nipple. It's the only grease nipple on the freaking bike, okay? Why would you not want to grease it? You ask the people at the dealership and they say, oh, because when we grease it, you know, the grease gets hot and it sometimes drips down and it might go like on the fender or something like that. And people get upset. Really? So you've been riding around, maybe for a couple of weeks. Your bike is bum-ass dirty. You get a little grease spot on it. It's going to wash off when you wash your bike. But you're upset. So you'd rather pay Harley $139 an hour to spend, I don't know, 5 hours ripping the bike apart to replace those tapered roller bearings because you didn't want to put grease in it. Now, if you watch somebody else, they'll say you grease it, the grease nipple's in the middle of that thing. That way, when you put the grease in, it goes down to the bottom bearing, it goes up to the top bearing all at the same time. You keep putting the grease in until it just comes out the bearings a little bit. That way you know it got to the bearings. Then you take a rag and you wipe off the excess in there. What's the big problem? I don't see a problem with that. I mean, I'm an old school trucker, okay? And if it had a grease nipple, we greased it. And you grease it often. And then you never have a problem. So therein lies the debate. To grease or not to grease? I don't know. It's just my thoughts. I'm going to leave it up to you what you decide. Have a safe ride.